Have you ever saved someone's life only to have them pretend they didn't know who you were? The question hung in the Arizona air like heat shimmer over desert sand. A week ago, a woman named Nora had pulled a dying man from beneath a rock slide in Saddleback Canyon. His blood had soaked into the red earth while she worked with bare hands to free him, her fingers raw and bleeding by the time she dragged him clear. Today, that same man would stand before the iron gates of a ranch he claimed to own and look at her as though they had never met. But the story began earlier. Much earlier. The train pulled into Tucson Station at 6 in the evening on June 14th, 1883. The sun hung low over the Catalina Mountains, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold that seemed to pulse with the day's dying heat. The platform boards creaked under Nora's boots as she stepped down from the passenger car, everything she owned packed into a single canvas bag that had seen better days. 26 years old, patchy blood running through her veins from her mother's side. A woman who had learned early that the world would judge her before she opened her mouth, would measure her worth by the color of her skin rather than the strength of her character. She wore a calico dress that had been mended more times than she could count, but it was clean. That mattered. Her long black hair was pulled back in a single braid, practical rather than decorative. At her waist hung a small leather pouch, hand-stitched and decorated with beadwork in the old style. Her grandmother's medicine bag, the only thing of real value she carried. The station was nearly empty at this hour. A few travelers hurrying to make connections, a family saying goodbye to someone heading east. And Clyde, the station master, a wiry man with tobacco-stained fingers and eyes that had seen too much of life's disappointments to expect anything good. He looked up from his ledger when Nora approached. His gaze traveled from her worn dress to her sun-darkened skin, lingering on the medicine bag at her waist. His mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. "Help you, miss," the tone suggested he doubted it very much. Nora pulled the letter from her bag. The paper had grown soft from handling during the long journey from Fort Apache. She had read it so many times the creases threatened to tear through the words. But she could recite every syllable from memory anyway. 47 words that had seemed like a lifeline when she first received them. "I'm here to meet Mr. Blackwood, Thomas Blackwood. He was supposed to be waiting." Clyde squinted at the letter, then at Nora, then back at the letter. Something shifted in his weathered face. Recognition, perhaps? Or maybe just surprise. "You're the bride." He didn't bother hiding his disbelief. "For Mr. Thomas Blackwood of Silver Star Ranch." That's what the letter says. Clyde scratched his jaw, the rasp of stubble loud in the quiet station. "Well, now Mr. Blackwood is the wealthiest rancher in 3 territories, owns more land than some eastern states. And he went and picked—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Nora had heard variations of the same sentiment her entire life. The unspoken words hung between them like smoke. Is he here or not? Haven't seen hide nor hair of him. Not today, not yesterday, neither. The train whistle echoed across the valley, growing fainter as the locomotive pulled away toward its next destination. Nora watched it disappear into the gathering dusk, that thin line of smoke, the only proof it had ever been there at all. The sound faded, the smoke dissolved, and she stood alone on a platform in a town where she knew no one, waiting for a man who hadn't come. 8 months ago, her mother had died. Consumption, the doctor had called it. A wasting disease that had hollowed out the woman who had raised her, who had taught her to read the land and trust in the old medicines, who had worked her fingers to bone in textile mills to keep food on their table. Nora had sat beside her mother's bed in their tiny room at Fort Apache and watched life slip away one shallow breath at a time. The last thing her mother had said was this: "Keep moving forward, Kayla girl. The spirits help those who help themselves." Kayla, the name her grandmother had given her at birth, crown of laurels in the language of her mother's people. But the world outside the reservation knew her as Nora. It was easier that way, less complicated. She had kept moving forward. Left Fort Apache, found work at a Chinese laundry in Tucson, sleeping in a storage room behind the washing tubs, eating 1 meal a day, saving every penny she could. 6 months of that life. 6 months of wondering if this was all there would ever be. Then she had seen the advertisement in the Tucson newspaper. A simple notice, barely 3 lines of type. Seeking honest, hard-working woman for companionship and partnership. Will provide home security, stable life. Contact T. Blackwood, Silver Star Ranch, Arizona Territory. She had written 3 letters. Careful letters honest about who she was, where she came from, what she hoped to find. Not wealth, not luxury, just a place to belong, a home. Four walls and a roof, and someone who might see her as more than a half-breed serving girl. 3 letters had come back. 47 words in the third one-on-one. The letter in her bag now soft as cloth from constant handling. Dear Miss Nora, I am a man of few words and fewer graces, but I am honest, and I will be good to you. The West is hard country, but there is beauty here if you know where to look. I have land, a sturdy house, in need of a companion. If you are willing to take a chance on a stranger, I will meet you at Tucson Station on June 14th. Respectfully yours, T. Blackwood. 47 words. She had staked her entire future on 47 words. And now the man who wrote them was nowhere to be found. How far to the ranch? Clyde looked at her like she had asked him to explain the workings of the stars. 10 miles west through Saddleback Canyon. But miss, it'll be full dark in 2 hours, and that road ain't safe after sundown. Nora thought about the storage room at the laundry, the sacks of flour that served as her bed, the Chinese owner who had been kind enough in his way, but who had made it clear her position was temporary. She thought about going back to that, waiting another day, another week for a man who might never show up. Waiting had never done her any good. Is there a shortcut? Clyde's eyebrows climbed. He studied her for a long moment, perhaps seeing something he hadn't expected. Determination, maybe, or desperation. Sometimes the two look the same. There's a path through the canyon, cuts about 3 miles off. Follow the creek and bed north till you see a split rock that looks like a broken tooth bare left there. He paused. But I really wouldn't recommend it. Not alone, not this late. I appreciate the warning. Nora picked up her bag and stepped off the platform onto the hard-packed dirt. The smell hit her immediately. Sage and creosote bush, dry grass and sun-baked earth. Nothing like the soot and river stench of the cities back east where she had spent brief, miserable months trying to make her way. This was clean, sharp, alive. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk screamed. She squared her shoulders and started walking. The canyon swallowed sound the way a well swallows stones. Nora had been walking for nearly an hour. The walls of Saddleback had risen on either side steep enough to trap the heat of the dying day. Sweat plastered her dress to her back. The canvas bag grew heavier with each step. She hadn't passed another soul. No wagons, no riders, nothing but scrub brush and red rock and the distant chatter of a creek that promised water if she could just keep going. The silence pressed against her ears like cotton wool. What kind of man doesn't come to meet his bride? She had asked herself that question 100 times since stepping off the train. The letter had been so careful, so precise. Every word chosen with thought. But words were easy, actions told the truth. And the action of not showing up spoke louder than 47 written promises. The rational part of her mind whispered that she should turn back, find somewhere in Tucson to spend the night, return to the station tomorrow, send a telegram, wait for an explanation. The sensible choice was always to wait. But another voice, deeper and more insistent, said something different. Her grandmother's voice carried on memory and desert wind. When you see someone in need, Kayla girl, you don't walk past. That's not who we are. Her feet kept moving, one step, then another. The creek bed wound through the canyon like a silver thread catching the last rays of sunlight. She followed it north, searching for the split rock Clyde had mentioned. The horse appeared around the bend like a ghost. Nora froze. The animal stood in the middle of the path, a tall chestnut with a white blaze on its forehead, reins trailing in the dust. It watched her with large liquid eyes that showed too much white. Dried foam crusted its neck. Wherever it had come from, it had been running hard. Easy now, Nora murmured, stepping closer. Easy. The horse snorted but didn't bolt. She could see it trembling muscles twitching beneath its coat. That's when she saw the blood. Dark stains on the saddle, smeared along the horse's right side, still wet enough to gleam in the fading light. Too much to be from a scratch or scrape. This was serious bleeding. Life-threatening bleeding. Her stomach dropped. She followed the trail with her eyes. Scuff marks in the dust. Displaced stones. They led around a cluster of boulders toward a section where fresh rockfall had spilled across the path. The slide was recent. She could see the raw scar on the canyon wall above where tons of stone had given way. Walk away, said the sensible voice in her head. Get on the horse. Ride to town. find help. But her grandmother's voice said something different, and her feet were already moving. The rocks were the color of dried blood in the fading light, some small as fists, others large as barrels. They had come down recently within the last few hours. The smell of crushed stone hung in the air. She climbed over the first boulder, then the second, and stopped. A hand jutted out from beneath a slab of granite. Fingers curled toward the sky, motionless. A man's hand. Broad palm, calloused fingers, a simple silver ring on the third finger. The skin was tanned dark from sun, but had gone pale from blood loss. Nora dropped her bag. She scrambled over the remaining rocks, ignoring the way sharp edges bit into her palms. The man lay on his side, half buried. His face was turned away, but she could see the rise and fall of his chest. Shallow, labored, but there, alive. Mister. She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. His shirt was torn, soaked with blood from a deep gash across his forehead. Dark hair matted with blood and dust. His left leg was pinned under a rock too heavy for her to move alone. Mister, can you hear me? No response. She looked at the fading sky, looked at the unconscious stranger, looked at her hands already scraped and bleeding from climbing over the rocks. The sensible choice was still to ride for help, but the blood was still flowing from the head wound, and the sun was nearly gone. And she remembered what her grandmother had taught her about head wounds, how the cold crept in fast once the body started giving up. She closed her eyes for just a moment. Spirits, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but I can't leave him here to die. Please give me strength. She opened her eyes and rolled up her sleeves. The smaller rocks came away first. Her fingernails split against the granite. She didn't stop. Each stone she pulled free revealed more. His shoulder, the curve of his back, the torn fabric of what had once been a good wool shirt. His breathing changed, hitched. A low groan escaped his lips. Hold on, she said, though she didn't know if he could hear. I'm getting you out. The slab pinning his leg was the problem, flat and heavy, wedged at an angle that made leverage difficult. She braced her shoulder against it and pushed. Her boots scraped against loose gravel. The rock shifted barely an inch, maybe two. Not enough. She repositioned herself, dug her heels in and pushed again. Harder this time until her arms shook and spots danced at the edges of her vision. The slab scraped sideways. His leg came free. Nora collapsed against the boulder chest, heaving. Her hands were raw, bleeding in places where skin had torn away. But the man was free. That's what mattered. His eyes opened. Gray. Pale gray like winter sky before snow. They fixed on her face, unfocused at first, struggling to make sense of what they were seeing. His lips moved. No sound came out. She reached for the canteen attached to the saddle of the waiting horse. Battered leather worn smooth with use. She unscrewed the cap, lifted his head as gently as she could, and tipped a small amount of water against his mouth. He swallowed, coughed, swallowed again. Water, he rasped. I know. Easy now, not too fast. His eyes drifted shut, then opened again. This time they held something approaching clarity. He looked at her, really looked, and she saw confusion mixed with something else. Gratitude, maybe? Or fear? Sometimes the two were hard to tell apart. Who? Another cough, deeper this time. Who are you? Doesn't matter right now. She examined his leg in the dying light, swollen, already purpling at the ankle. But the bone hadn't broken through the skin. That was good. The gash on his forehead was worse, deep enough to show white beneath the red. It needed cleaning, stitching. Things she couldn't do here in the failing dark. There's a cabin. His voice was barely a whisper. Half-mile, follow the creek. Then his eyes rolled back and he went limp. She looked at the horse, looked at the unconscious stranger, looked at the last sliver of sun vanishing behind the canyon rim. Half a mile in the dark with a man twice her weight who might not live till morning. But what other choice was there? Getting him onto the horse nearly broke her. She hooked her arms under his shoulders and pulled. His boots dragged furrows in the dirt. Every muscle in her back screamed. Her knees buckled twice before she managed to prop him against a boulder. The horse stood patient, as if understanding the desperate nature of what was happening. Its breath came warm against her cheek. Come on now, she muttered, grabbing his belt with one hand, his shirt collar with the other. You've got to help me, just a little. Something flickered across his face. His good leg moved, found the stirrup. She shoved from below, teeth gritted, and somehow impossibly he ended up draped across the saddle like a sack of grain. She took the reins and started walking. One step, then another. The creek bed stretched ahead, pale stones glowing faintly in the last light. Half a mile, he'd said. She held on to that. Half a mile to shelter, to safety, to a place where she could try to save this stranger's life. Please, she prayed silently. Please, let me find this cabin. The cabin appeared between one blink and the next, a dark shape hunched against the hillside barely visible in the gathering night. The creek gurgled past its western wall. No smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows. Abandoned, most likely. But it had walls. It had a roof. It would have to do. She pushed open the door. The hinges shrieked in protest. The smell hit her first. Old wood and mouse droppings. Something musty and closed in. Beneath that, the faint char of a long-dead fire. Her hands fumbled along the mantel. Found a candle stub. Matches beside it. The match head scraped and flared sulfur, stinging her nose. The flames sputtered to life, throwing shadows across the single room. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A wooden cot with a straw mattress that had seen better days. A table, two chairs, an iron pot hanging from a hook over the cold hearth. It smelled like a place that had been forgotten. But it had walls. It had a roof. It would keep them alive through the night. She went back for him. Dragging him inside took the last of her strength. She laid him on the cot as gently as she could manage. His forehead burned against her palm, even as she pulled him into the shelter. The fever was already starting. She could see it in the flush high on his cheeks, the way his skin had gone from pale to an unhealthy red. Water, fire, light to work by. Those were the priorities. The creek was 20 steps from the door. She found a copper pot in the corner and filled it, the water running cold and clear enough to numb her fingers. She carried it back and set it by the hearth. Kindling first, dry sticks stacked beside the fireplace left by whoever had last used this place. She crumpled leaves for tinder. The match caught on the second try, and flame crawled up through the kindling like a living thing. Heat crept into the cabin. Light flickered across the walls, pushing back the dark. She tore strips from her petticoat. The cotton was worn thin, but clean. That mattered more than strength right now. She dipped a strip in the warming water, wrung it out, and pressed it against the wound on his forehead. The man flinched. His eyes flew open. Wild, unseeing. Easy now. She held his shoulders down. You're safe, lie still. He fought her for a moment, some part of his fevered brain convinced he was still trapped under the rocks. Then the strength drained out of him, and he sank back, chest heaving. She cleaned the gash with careful strokes. The water turned pink, then red. She dumped it outside, refilled the pot, started again. The wound was deep but clean. No dirt embedded, no rock fragments. That was good. It would heal if she could keep infection away. His leg worried her more. The ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. Purple bruising spread toward his knee like spilled ink. She ran her fingers along the bone, pressing gently. He groaned but didn't wake. No grinding sensation. No unnatural angles. Sprained, she thought. Badly sprained, maybe torn, but not broken. She needed something to draw out the fever, something for the swelling. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Yerba mansa for wounds, Kayla girl. Willow bark for fever. Look for them by running water. She took the candle and went back outside. The creek bank yielded what she needed. Yerba mansa grew in thick clumps near the water's edge, its leaves soft and silvery in the candlelight. She gathered handfuls, stuffed them into her pockets. Found willow too, its branches trailing in the current like long hair. Back inside, she searched until she found a wooden bowl. A smooth river stone served as a pestle. She crushed the yerba leaves until they released their sharp, bitter smell. The smell of her grandmother's medicine lodge. The smell of childhood, of being safe and cared for. The man hadn't moved. His breathing came fast and shallow sweat beading on his upper lip despite the coolness of the night. She packed the crushed herbs against his forehead and bound it with strips of petticoat. Then she turned to his leg, wrapping the yerba around the swollen ankle, tying it firm but not too tight. More water heated. She poured some into a tin cup, added willow bark, let it steep until the water turned pale gold. Here. She lifted his head, held the cup to his lips. Drink this. It'll help with the fever. He swallowed without opening his eyes. Once. Twice. The warm liquid ran down his chin, but some went down his throat. That was enough. She eased him back onto the thin pillow and sat down on the floor beside the cot. Then she waited. The fever peaked somewhere in the deep hours of the night. Nora lost track of time. There was only the rhythm. Check his forehead, wring out the cloth, press it against his burning skin. Again, again. His body shook with chills even as heat radiated off him like a stove. He muttered words she couldn't understand, names maybe, fragments of sentences that made no sense strung together. Once he grabbed her wrist with startling strength, his eyes open but seeing something far away. "Cain," he whispered, "I didn't steal the horse. You have to believe me. They'll hang me." She stilled. On what horse? Who would hang him? But he was already gone again. Lost in the fever dream, his grip loosening. "I'm here," she said, though she knew he couldn't really hear her. "I'm here." More words tumbled out as the night wore on. "Montana. Can't go back. They'll find me. Sarah, I'm sorry. Had to run. Not a thief. Not a thief." Each fragment was a piece of a puzzle she didn't have the full picture for. A man running from something. Running from someone. A theft he claimed he didn't commit. A place called Montana where people wanted to hang him. She changed the poultice twice. Fed the fire when it burned low. The darkness outside shifted from black to gray to the pale pink of approaching dawn. And slowly, so slowly, his breathing steadied. His skin cooled beneath her palm. The trembling stopped. By the time true daylight crept through the gaps in the cabin walls, the worst had passed. Nora let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes burned, but the man was alive. She had kept him alive. She curled onto her side on the floor near the hearth and let exhaustion take her. She woke to the sound of his voice. "You did all this?" Nora jerked upright, momentarily disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, painting everything in shades of gold. The fire had burned down to coals, and the man was awake, propped on one elbow, looking at her with those pale gray eyes. He took in the scene. The bandages on his head, the herbs wrapped around his ankle, the strips of torn petticoat drying on the hearthstones. His gaze moved to her hands, still bloody and raw from digging him out of the rock slide. "There wasn't anyone else," she said, pushing herself to her feet. Her whole body protested the movement. He took the cup of water she offered, drank deeply. His hands shook slightly, but he managed it. "Thank you." The words came out rough, scraped raw. "You saved my life." She didn't answer. The truth of it sat between them like something too big to acknowledge directly. "What's your name?" "Nora." "That's beautiful. What does it mean?" The question surprised her. Most people didn't ask. "Crown of light. At least that's what my grandmother said. In the old language." He studied her face with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. "I'm Eli," he said after a moment. "Eli Morgan." Something about the way he said it made her pause. A hesitation so slight she almost missed it. Like a man who had to think for just a second before remembering his own name. But he was hurt, weak from blood loss and fever. Of course he might be confused. "Well, Eli Morgan, you should rest. You nearly died last night." "Because of you, I didn't." He lay back down and she could see the effort it cost him. His face had gone pale again, though not with fever this time. Just exhaustion. She busied herself with small tasks, building up the fire, checking his bandages, trying not to think about the fact that she was alone in an abandoned cabin with a strange man, trying not to remember the things he had said in his fever about running about Montana, about someone who wanted to hang him. "Where were you going?" he asked, "when you found me?" She unwrapped the last of her provisions. 2 pieces of cornbread gone hard as rocks. That's all she had left. Silver Star Ranch, to meet a man named Thomas Blackwood. She saw something flicker across Eli's face. Surprise recognition. It was gone too quickly to be sure. He sent for me, wrote me letters, promised a home. She broke 1 piece of cornbread in half, then in half again, weighing the portions in her palms. But he didn't show up to meet me at the station. So I started walking. And found me instead, and found you. She crossed the cabin and placed the larger portion in his hand. He looked down at it, then back up at her. "This is all you have, isn't it?" You need the strength of more than I do. What about you? She held up her smaller piece. I've got mine. They ate in silence. The cornbread was dry crumbly, the sweetness long since faded. But it was food. It would keep them going. When they finished, Eli spoke again. Why did you stop? Most people would have ridden for help. A woman alone, strange man bleeding in the dirt. Most folks would have kept going. Nora thought about her answer. She could have said it was the right thing to do. She could have mentioned her grandmother's teachings. But the truth was simpler than that. Because you were hurt, and I was there. It's not more complicated than that. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression, like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. You're a good person, Nora. I just did what anyone should do. That's what makes you good. 3 days in the cabin and Eli could walk, not well, not far, but he could make it from the cot to the door without her arm beneath his shoulder. That was progress. Nora taught him about the plants by the creek, not because he asked, but because teaching kept her hands busy and her mind from dwelling on questions she wasn't ready to ask yet. This is yerba mansa, she said, pulling a stem to show him. The morning sun caught the silver green of the leaves. See how they're shaped, almost like hearts, and that color underneath like tarnished silver, good for wounds infections. You crush it into a paste with a little water. Eli took the stem from her hand, turning it over with surprising care. Their fingers brushed. How do you know it is yerba mansa and not something that'll make things worse? The leaves, the shape, the color, the way it grows near water. You have to learn to see. She moved to another plant. This is willow. The white bark there. Good for fever, for bringing down swelling. You can steep it in hot water for tea or chew the bark directly. He followed slower, his injured ankle protesting the uneven ground. But he didn't complain, just watched and listened and asked questions that showed he was truly hearing what she said. They worked their way along the creek bank. She showed him Doc for rashes and insect bites, warned him about the plants that looked similar but grew further from water, the ones that would make him sick. Explained how her mother had taught her and her grandmother before that until she could name every plant in the woods with her eyes closed. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman, Eli said. She was practical. That's what kept us alive. That's a kind of wisdom. The conversation drifted to other things. Her childhood on the reservation. His years working ranches across the territory. They traded stories like they were trading something precious, each revelation, a small act of trust. But there were gaps in what he told her. Places where details should have been but weren't. He said he'd grown up on a ranch in Montana. Said he knew cattle and horse and hard work. But when she asked why he'd left, why he'd come to Arizona, his answer was vague. Had some trouble. Needed a fresh start. She didn't push. Everyone had secrets. She understood that better than most. On the third night, the storm came. One moment, the evening sky was streaked with purple and gold, the air still and warm. The next, black clouds swallowed the canyon rim whole, and the air turned thick and charged. The kind of heaviness that pressed against your ears and made the hair on your arms stand up. Get inside, Eli said, already moving toward the door despite his bad leg. The horse, if she breaks free, we're stranded. They barely crossed the threshold before the first drops fell. Fat and heavy, striking the roof like flung gravel. Then the sky split open and water came down in sheets so thick Nora couldn't see the creek anymore. Lightning cracked across the darkness, illuminating the canyon in frozen white flashes. Thunder followed close enough to shake the cabin walls. The roof began to leak almost at once. First one drip, then another, then a steady stream in the corner near the cot. Water running down the wall like tears. Nora grabbed the bucket and positioned it beneath the worst of the flow. Eli dragged the cot toward the far wall where the roof seemed more solid. His ankle forgotten in the urgency, more leaks opened. Water ran in from cracks they hadn't noticed before. The packed dirt floor turned to mud, dark and slick. They worked without speaking. Nora gathered what she could save. The blankets, her bag, the precious herbs. Eli wrestled the table away from a growing pool, stacked their remaining food on the highest shelf he could reach. By midnight, the cabin had become a swamp. The corner near the hearth was the only spot still dry. Barely. A space maybe 4 feet square pressed against the warm stones. They huddled there together, their backs to the wall, the single thin blanket stretched across both their shoulders. The fire had died when water found its way down the chimney, turning the coals to hissing black nothing. Now the darkness was complete, except when lightning split the sky. Nora's teeth chattered. Her dress was soaked from the waist down, heavy and cold against her legs. She drew her knees up, wrapped her arms around them, tried to make herself small. This was what her life had come to. Crouching in a leaking shack in the middle of nowhere, covered in mud and creek water, shivering beside a man she didn't really know. No money, no prospects, no one in the world who knew or cared whether she lived or died. The woman who had stepped off the train at Tucson Station, clean-dressed and hopeful, her letter clutched in her hand like a promise. That woman seemed like a stranger now, a fool, a child who had believed that 47 words could change her life. Nora, Eli's voice was barely audible above the rain hammering the roof. She lifted her head, found his face in the darkness. "There's something I need to tell you." The words hung between them, heavy with significance. "When you found me in that canyon. When you asked my name, I wasn't completely—" Thunder exploded overhead, so close the whole cabin shook. The horse screamed outside, a sound of pure animal terror. Eli was on his feet before she could react, lurching toward the door. "The horse, if she runs off—" He threw the door open and disappeared into the wall of rain. Nora scrambled up, stumbled to the doorway. Lightning showed her the scene in frozen snapshots. Eli fighting through mud that sucked at his boots with every step. The horse rearing against her, tether eyes white with fear. Rain driving sideways in the wind so thick it looked like smoke. She watched him grab for the reins, watched his boots slide in the muck, watched him go down. He fell hard face first into the mud. The horse's hooves came down inches from his head, churning the ground to black soup. He rolled, came up on his hands and knees, mud coating his face, his hair filling his mouth. He spat, grabbed for the reins again. The horse reared. He held on. For a long moment it was just the two of them. Man and beast locked in a battle neither could afford to lose. Eli's bad leg buckled. He went down on one knee in the muck, sank past his ankle. But his grip on the reins didn't break. The horse screamed again. Pulled, fought. Then something shifted. The animal's head dropped. Her sides heaved. She stood trembling, beaten down by the storm. Eli pulled himself upright, using the saddle for support. He led her to the lee side of the cabin, tied the reins to a post driven deep in the ground. His hands slipped twice on the wet leather, but he got it done. When he came back inside, he looked like something dragged up from the grave. Mud caked every inch of him. His clothes, his skin, the creases of his face. He stood in the doorway, water streaming off him in rivers. "What were you going to tell me?" The question came out harder than she meant it to. Eli flinched like she had struck him. "Nothing." He turned away, moved toward the dry corner, leaving a trail of muddy footprints. "It doesn't matter." "It does matter." She followed him, stood blocking his path. "You were about to say something, before the horse, before the thunder. You were going to tell me something, and I want to know what it was." Lightning flashed again. His face appeared in the white light. Mud streaked, exhausted. And something else. Something that looked like shame burning so bright it hurt to see. "Not tonight." His voice was barely a whisper. "Please, not tonight." She studied him for a long moment. The mud in his hair, the tremor in his hands, the way he couldn't meet her eyes. She stepped aside. They didn't speak again that night. Morning came with stillness. The rain had stopped. Gray light seeped through the cracks, showing the ruin of their shelter. Mud everywhere, standing water in the low spots, their belongings scattered and soaked. Eli was already up, already standing by the door, looking out at a world washed clean and new. He had scraped most of the mud from his face, though traces still clung in his hairline behind his ears. His clothes were stiff with dried dirt. "We need to go," he said without turning around. Nora pushed herself upright. Every muscle ached. "Go where?" "Away from here. This place won't make it through another storm." He paused, drew a breath. "And there's somewhere I need to take you." "Where?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, scraped raw. "To the man you came to meet. To Silver Star Ranch." She started to ask how he knew the way, but stopped. Of course he knew. Everyone in the territory probably knew where the biggest ranch was located. "Can you do that?" She gestured to his ankle. "It's 10 miles at least." "I can make it. We'll ride together." He turned to face her then, and in the gray morning light she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. A desperate kind of resolve, like a man preparing to walk to the gallows. "Nora, I need you to trust me, just for today. Can you do that?" She thought about the night before, the interrupted confession, the shame in his eyes, all the things she didn't know, all the questions he wouldn't answer. But she also thought about the way he had run into the storm to save the horse despite his injured leg, the way he had listened when she taught him about the plants, the way he had shared his meager portion of cornbread and looked at it like it was the most precious gift he had ever received. "Yes," she said, "I reckon I can." The horse carried them both. Nora sat in front, her hands gripping the worn leather of the saddle horn. Eli sat behind her, one arm loose around her waist to keep her steady. His chest was warm against her back, solid and real through the damp fabric of their clothes. They had been riding for 2 hours. The canyon had given way to rolling hills, the hills to open grassland that stretched toward the horizon in waves of golden brown and pale green. The storm had washed the world clean. Everything smelled of wet earth and sage fresh and sharp. The sky went on forever blue and endless, with clouds piled up on the horizon like mountains made of cotton. Neither of them spoke much. What was there to say? They were riding toward a truth that would change everything. Both of them knew it. The silence between them felt less like companionship now and more like the quiet before thunder. The first rider appeared near midday. He came over a rise to the east, a dark shape against the bright sky. A young man on a paint horse driving a small herd of cattle toward a fence line in the distance. Nora watched him notice them, watched him wheel his horse around, watched him ride closer with the easy seat of someone born to the saddle. She felt the change in Eli, the way his breathing shifted, the way his muscles went taut. His arm around her waist tightened almost imperceptibly. The rider pulled up 20 feet away. Dust rose from his horse's hooves, caught the sunlight, settled slow. He pushed back his hat, revealing a sun-darkened face creased with surprise. "Mr. Hartley." The name hung in the air like smoke. Nora went rigid. "Mr. Hartley, not Eli Morgan." "Mr. Hartley, sir, we've been looking for you. Whole outfit's been out searching since Tuesday last." Eli's voice came from behind her, tight and controlled. "I'm fine, Ben. Had some trouble in the canyon. This woman here found me, took care of me." The young cowboy, Ben, glanced at Nora. Curiosity flickered in his eyes there and gone quickly, hidden behind the blank face of a man who knew better than to ask questions of his betters. "Yes, sir. Should I ride ahead? Let Mr. Cooper know you're coming in." "Do that." Ben touched his hat again, wheeled his horse, and took off at a gallop toward the horizon. They watched him go, swallowed by the golden grass. Then Nora spoke, her voice flat and cold. "Mr. Hartley." Eli said nothing. His arm stayed around her waist, but it felt different now. Heavier. Wrong. "That's what he called you. Mr. Hartley." Still nothing. She faced forward again, stared at the grassland stretching out before them, at the distant line of fence posts, at the smudge of buildings on the horizon that hadn't been there an hour ago. "You're going to explain," she said. "When we get wherever we're going, you're going to explain everything." "Yes." His voice was barely more than a breath against her hair. "I will." They passed 3 more riders before reaching the gate. Each one stopped. Each one touched his hat. Each one called him Mr. Hartley, or simply Sir, with the kind of deference that couldn't be learned or faked. The deference of men who depended on another man for their livelihood. Nora felt their eyes on her, curious, questioning, but nobody asked who she was. Nobody said a word beyond their greeting and their assurance that they were glad to see him safe. The buildings grew larger as they approached. What she had taken for a single structure from far off turned out to be many. A main house with a wraparound porch. A long bunkhouse with smoke rising from its chimney. A barn bigger than any building she had ever seen. Stables, corrals, outbuildings she couldn't name. All of it spread across the landscape like a small town unto itself. And then she saw the gate. Massive posts of weathered oak, silver gray with age. A crossbeam high overhead. Mounted on that crossbeam was a star. 5 points. Wrought iron, black against the blue sky. Silver Star Ranch. Her hands went numb on the saddle horn. She could hear her own heartbeat, feel it pounding against her ribs. But everything else seemed very far away, like watching herself from a great distance, like a dream she couldn't wake from. The gate stood open. Beyond it, a packed dirt road led toward the main house, 2 stories tall, white painted rails along the porch, lace curtains in the windows. Smoke rose from the chimney. Red geraniums bloomed in boxes beneath the windows, bright as drops of blood. A home, a real home, the kind she had dreamed about in her narrow boarding house bed. The horse stopped just inside the gate. An old man came running from the barn, white hair flying beneath a battered hat, weathered face creased deep by sun and wind. Bow-legged gait of someone who had spent 60 years in the saddle. He was shouting something, words she couldn't quite make sense of, through the roaring in her ears. Then he was at the horse's side, looking up at Eli with tears cutting tracks through the dust on his cheeks. "Mr. Hartley Cole, sweet mercy, we thought you was dead. Found your hat in that canyon. All that blood on the rocks. Been searching high and low for a week now. Mr. Hartley, and the name Cole." She turned in the saddle, looked at the man behind her. Really looked the way she should have looked from the very first day. His face had gone pale beneath the sunburn and the healing cuts. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath the skin. And his eyes, those gray eyes that had watched her so carefully for a week now. They were fixed on her face with something that looked like a man waiting for the axe to fall. Understanding crashed over her like cold water. The letters. The man who hadn't come to meet her at the station. The ranch she had been traveling toward when she found a stranger bleeding in the canyon. This ranch, these gates, this man. Her voice came out wrong when she spoke. Crooked. Broken. You knew. It wasn't a question. Eli, or whoever he really was, didn't deny it. From the very beginning, you knew who I was. Yes. One word. No excuses. No explanations. She slid down from the horse. Her legs were unsteady beneath her, but she kept her feet, turned to face him, still mounted, still looking down at her with that terrible expression. "I told you everything, about my mother, the letters, why I came west, all of it, and the whole time you knew. I'm sorry." The words meant nothing, less than nothing. "Who are you, Dime?" The old man, the foreman, stepped forward. His eyes moved between them, relief giving way to confusion. "Ma'am, Nora ignored him. She was looking at the man on the horse, the man who had let her nurse him through fever, who had learned about plants like she was teaching him something precious, who had almost told her the truth last night before the storm intervened. "Who are you?" He swung down from the horse, slowly, carefully. His bad ankle nearly gave way when his boots hit the ground, but he caught himself on the saddle straight and faced her. "My name is Cole Hartley." The words came out quiet. "Before that, it was Cole Morgan. I work here. I worked for Thomas Blackwood." The past tense registered somewhere in the back of her mind. "Where is he? Where is Thomas Blackwood?" Silence, the kind of silence that answers questions all on its own. "He's dead, isn't he?" The throat moved. 2 months ago, stroke. The world tilted. Nora grabbed the fence post to steady herself. "Then who wrote the letters? Who sent for me?" She already knew, but she needed to hear him say it. "I did." 2 words that changed everything. "I wrote them. I used his name. I sent the train ticket. I was supposed to meet you at the station, but I had the accident in the canyon before I could get there." Cowboys were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. 8, 10 men all watching this scene unfold, watching a woman in a ruined dress confront their foreman with questions that made the air crackle like lightning. What? Cole looked at her, at this woman he had lied to from the moment she saved his life, at the person who had given him her last food, who had sat up all night keeping him alive, who had asked for nothing in return. "Because I'm just a cowboy. I don't have anything to offer. I thought if I used his name, if I pretended to be someone I'm not, you might—" He stopped. Couldn't finish. "I might what come? And then what was your plan? When I figured out you weren't the owner of the biggest ranch in 3 territories, what were you going to do then?" "I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead." The honesty of it was almost worse than another lie would have been. "I just wanted—" His voice cracked. "I've been alone so long. I wanted someone. I wanted a home. And your letters, they were so kind, so real. You only wanted the same thing I did, a place to belong. I thought maybe we could build that together. Built on lies. Yes, built on lies, and I have no excuse for that. None. Nora looked past him, at the house that should have been her new home, at the ranch that stretched for thousands of acres in every direction, at the empire built by a man she would never meet because he was dead and buried while she had been washing clothes in a Chinese laundry, dreaming of 47 words that turned out to be fiction. She looked back at Cole. I need time, she said, to think. Take as long as you need. The room upstairs, the one I prepared for you. It's yours, no matter what you decide. A woman appeared on the porch, broad-shouldered, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, kind eyes set deep in a weathered face. Let her breathe, patron, she said with a slight accent. Mexican, perhaps. You've done enough damage for one day. She walked down the steps, her boots making no sound on the wood. She took Nora's arm gently. Come, there's a bath waiting, hot water, clean towels. You look like you could use both. Nora let herself be led toward the house. At the porch steps, she stopped, turned back. Cole stood where she had left him, holding the horse's reins, looking up at her with hope naked on his face. Those letters you wrote me. She held his gaze. Those 47 words. Were any of them real? He didn't hesitate. Every last one. She studied his face for a long moment, looking for the law, looking for the truth, finding something complicated and painful that might have been both. Then she climbed the steps, crossed the porch, and disappeared through the door. Behind her, she heard the old foreman speak. You made a mess of this, son. And Cole's response barely audible. I know, Jack. God help me, I know. The room smelled of lavender and lemon oil. Nora stood in the doorway, unable to move forward, unable to turn back. The bed was made up with a white quilt hand-stitched in a pattern of interlocking wedding rings. A wardrobe of dark oak stood against one wall, its doors slightly open to show the edges of fabric inside. Calico. Gingham. Something that might have been blue silk, though she couldn't imagine herself ever wearing such a thing. A washstand held a porcelain basin painted with tiny roses. A rocking chair sat by the window, positioned to catch the morning light. He had prepared all of this. For her. For a woman he had never met. The woman who had led her upstairs, who had introduced herself as Ruth the housekeeper, stepped aside. Take your time. There's soap and towels by the basin. Fresh clothes in the wardrobe. I'll bring up some food once you've had a chance to wash. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Nora crossed to the window. The glass was wavy with age, distorting the view slightly. But she could see the land rolling away toward the horizon, fences dividing pastures, cattle moving in slow clusters across the grass, the glint of water where a creek wound through the eastern section. His land, his cattle, his creek, his lie. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass and closed her eyes. What did she want? The question had followed her all the way from Fort Apache. She had told herself she wanted safety, a roof, walls, a place where she belonged. But standing in this room prepared for a woman who hadn't existed yet, a bride Cole Hartley had dreamed into being, she understood that she had been lying to herself too. She wanted to matter. To someone. To anyone but Damon. And for 3 days in a leaking cabin she had. The knock came an hour later. Nora had washed her face in the porcelain basin, the water cool and clean, smelling faintly of roses from the soap. She had combed the tangles from her hair with a silver-backed brush she found on the dresser. Changed into one of the dresses from the wardrobe, simple blue cotton, nothing fancy, but clean and whole in ways her own clothes hadn't been in weeks. She looked at herself in the mirror above the washstand. The face looking back was thinner than she remembered. Older, but the eyes were the same. Her mother's eyes, dark and steady. Come in. The door opened. Cole stood on the threshold, hat in his hands. He was still wearing the mud-stained clothes from the road. He had washed his face and hands, but dirt still clung in the creases of his neck, beneath his fingernails. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. May I? She nodded. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, stood with his back against it, turning his hat in his hands, around and around. The silence stretched between them like wire pulled taut. You wanted an explanation, Cole said at last, a real one, not what I said out there at the gate. Nora sat in the rocking chair by the window, folded her hands in her lap the way her mother had taught her. waited. Cole moved to the center of the room. Stopped, his fingers worried at the hat brim. 5 years ago, I worked at a ranch in Montana, the Double K owned by a man named Silas Kane. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the floor, on his hands, on anything but her face. Kane was wealthy, powerful, connected to every judge and lawman in the territory. He was also a hard man, especially toward anyone who wasn't white. He had particular hatred for the Apache, for anyone with native blood. Nora's spine straightened. This at least was familiar territory. She knew men like Kane, had known them her whole life. There was a cowboy who worked there, Joseph Red Cloud, Apache, good man, hard worker. Kane treated him worse than the horses, called him things I won't repeat. One day I saw Kane strike Joseph with a riding crop for what he called insolence. Joseph had only asked for his wages. Cole's jaw tightened at the memory. I stepped between them, told Kane it wasn't right, told him Joseph was a man deserved to be treated like one. What did Kane do? He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "You want to stand with them? Then you're my enemy too." Cole moved to the window, stood looking out at the land below, his back to her. A week later, Kane's prize horse went missing, a thoroughbred worth $500. Next morning, Kane accused me of stealing it, said I'd sold it to a horse trader in Wyoming. Did you? No. The word came out flat, hard. I never touched that horse, but Kane had a trader who swore he bought it from a dark-haired cowboy named Cole. Kane's son James was the real thief. Took the horse to pay gambling debts, but Kane covered for him, pinned it on me instead. Nora listened, the pieces falling into place. The fevered words he had spoken that first night. Montana, can't go back. They'll hang me. The sheriff was Kane's friend. The judge owed him money. I knew if it went to trial, I'd lose. Joseph Red Cloud told me the same thing. He said, "They'll hang you, Cole. Run, live to fight another day." So you ran. I broke out of jail the night before the trial, changed my name to Cole Hartley, my mother's maiden name, headed south and didn't stop until I hit Arizona. He turned to face her then. That was 5 years ago. I've been running ever since, moving from ranch to ranch, never staying long enough to put down roots, never trusting anyone enough to tell them the truth. Until you met Thomas Blackwood. Until I met Thomas. 3 years ago. He hired me despite the fact I had no references, no papers, no past I could talk about. He said he judged a man by what he did now, not what he'd done before. Cole's voice softened when he spoke about Thomas. A year later, Thomas got thrown from a horse, broke 3 ribs, internal bleeding. I got him back to the house, sat with him all night, same way you sat with me. He lived, and after that he treated me like the son he never had. What about the letters, the advertisement? Thomas placed the ad before he died. He was lonely, wanted companionship, but he had the stroke before any responses came. I found your letters in his office after the funeral. 3 of them, so honest, so kind. You didn't ask for money or status, just a home. Cole took a step toward her. I read them over and over, and I thought, this is the kind of woman Thomas was looking for. Someone real, someone good. And I thought, maybe she's the kind of woman I need too. So you wrote back using his name? Yes, I wrote back, sent the train ticket, made all the arrangements. He paused. My plan was to meet you at the station. Tell you the truth right away. Explain about Thomas. Hope you might forgive the deception and give me a chance anyway. But the accident happened first. But the accident happened first. He nodded. And when I woke up and saw you there, saw this beautiful woman who had saved my life, I panicked. I thought if you knew the truth, knew I was just a cowboy with a criminal past, you'd leave. So I lied about my name, kept lying. Every day made it harder to tell the truth. Nora walked to the washstand, touched the porcelain basin with one finger. Those 3 days in the cabin, were they real? More real than anything in my life. She turned to face him. And this ranch, you said Thomas left it to you. In his will, yes, as thanks for saving his life. He wrote that I was the son he never had. Cole's voice went rough. But there's a condition. I have to marry within 6 months. If I don't, the ranch goes to the next heir. How much time is left? 3 weeks. The number hung between them like an accusation. That's not why I wrote to you. Cole said quickly. I wrote before I knew about the condition. I wrote because I was lonely and desperate and wanted a family. The deadline is it's just one more complication in a situation already too complicated. Nora moved to the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. If you had told me the truth in the cabin, that first day, I might have understood, might have forgiven, but you let me take care of you, feed you, teach you. All that time you knew you were deceiving me. I know. That's the part that hurts. Not that you're poor, not that you're a wanted man, but that you looked me in the eye and lied while I was trying to help you. Cole's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. I have no excuse. I was a coward. I am a coward. But I love you, Nora. These past days, they showed me what my life could be, what I could be. With you. I don't know what's real anymore. Then let me show you. Stay. Not forever, just long enough to see if the man in the cabin, the one who shared cornbread and learned about plants, if he was real. She opened the door. I'll think about it. The morning sun was too bright. Nora sat in the kitchen, a cup of coffee cooling in front of her, watching Ruth knead dough with practiced efficiency. The kitchen smelled of yeast and cinnamon, of things rising and becoming more than they were. The door opened. Cole stepped in, hat in hand dust on his boots from morning work. He stopped when he saw her. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Hope. Fear of hope. Morning. Morning. Ruth made herself scarce, wiping flour from her hands and disappearing through the side door with a look that said she knew when to give people privacy. Cole stood by the table, uncertain. Sit down, Nora said. We need to talk. He sat, across from her, close enough to touch, but carefully not touching. Tell me everything, she said. From the beginning, no more half-truths, no more gaps. If I'm going to stay even one more day, I need to know who you really are. So he told her about growing up on a small ranch in Montana, the son of a woman who died in childbirth and a father who drank himself to death before Cole turned 12. About being raised by a foreman who taught him to ride and rope and read the land. About the years of hard work that had carved calluses into his palms and an understanding of cattle into his bones. About Silas Kane and the false accusation. About Joseph Red Cloud, the Apache cowboy who had become a friend who had warned Cole to run before the hanging could happen. About the night Cole broke out of jail, stealing a horse he meant to return riding south through a snowstorm that nearly killed him. About the years of drifting, never staying long, always looking over his shoulder. The loneliness that ate at him worse than hunger. The way he'd started to believe he'd never have a real home again. About finding Thomas Blackwood ding by the side of a road, thrown from his horse, and making the choice to stop instead of ride past. About sitting with a stranger through the night, keeping him warm, keeping him alive. Thomas asked me my name when he woke up. I almost lied then too, almost said Cole Hartley, but something made me tell the truth. Cole Morgan. And you know what he said? Nora shook her head. He said, well, Cole Morgan, I don't care who you were yesterday. I care about the man who saved my life today. And that was it. He hired me, gave me work, gave me purpose, gave me a reason to stop running. Cole's eyes were bright. When he died, I felt like I'd lost my father all over again. The will was a surprise. I didn't expect anything, didn't think I deserved anything, but Thomas wrote that I'd earned it, that I was the only person he trusted to care for this land the way he had. And the condition, the marriage requirement. Thomas believed a ranch needed a family. He'd been alone too long, regretted it. He wanted me to have what he'd missed. A wife, children, a legacy. Nora sipped her cold coffee. It tasted bitter. So where does that leave us? That's up to you. I won't ask you to marry me for the ranch. Won't pressure you. Won't use the deadline to manipulate you. If I lose, Silver Star, because I couldn't earn your trust, honestly, then that's what I deserve. She studied his face, looking for the lie, looking for the angle, finding only exhaustion and honesty in something that looked like surrender. I'll stay, she said, for now, not because of the ranch, not because of the deadline, but because I need to know if the man in the cabin was real. Cole's breath came out in a rush. Thank you. I'll prove it to you. I swear I will. Don't make promises. Just be honest. From this moment forward, complete honesty. That's the only way this works. Complete honesty. I can do that. She stood, carried her cup to the wash basin. There's one more thing you should know, Cole said. The lawyer is coming this afternoon, Samuel Pierce. He handled Thomas's estate. He needs to talk to us about a problem. What kind of problem? Thomas's widow, Evelyn Shaw. She's contesting the will. The lawyer arrived at 2 o'clock. Samuel Pierce was a man in his 60s, thin as a rail fence with wire-rimmed spectacles, in the patient manner of someone who had seen every kind of human foolishness and still chose to believe the best of people. He spread papers across the kitchen table, legal documents dense with language Nora only half understood. Cole stood behind her chair, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him. The situation is complicated, Pierce said. Thomas and Evelyn married 8 years ago. The marriage was troubled from the start. She was 20, he was 55. It was, I believe, more about his money than affection. He pulled out a document yellowed with age. They separated after 2 years. Evelyn left. No contact for 4 years. Thomas believed they were divorced. He told me he'd filed the papers, that everything was finalized. But, Cole's voice was tight, but the divorce was never completed. The final paperwork is missing. It's possible it was never filed. It's possible it was filed but lost. Either way, Evelyn's lawyer claims she's still legally married to Thomas, which would make her the rightful heir, not you. Nora felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. Can she win? Maybe. She has a strong case. The marriage certificate is legitimate. The divorce papers are nowhere to be found. And she's hired Richard Blackwell out of Phoenix. Very expensive, very good. Pierce looked at Cole over his spectacles. Your best defense is to fulfill the conditions of the will. Marry. Show the court that you're meeting Thomas's requirements, that you deserve this inheritance. No, the word came out hard, final. I won't force Nora into marriage for legal reasons. She deserves better than that. Even if it means losing everything, even then. Pierce gathered his papers. Then we'll fight it the best we can. But Cole, you should know, this won't be easy. Evelyn has money. She has connections, and the court will sympathize with a widow over a cowboy. After he left, Nora stood at the window watching clouds build on the horizon. Behind her, she heard Cole moving around the kitchen, the scrape of a chair, the clink of a cup, then footsteps approaching. I meant what I said. His voice was quiet. I won't use you, won't put you in that position. She turned to face him. What if I wanted to help? You don't owe me anything. You've already given me more than I deserve. Maybe. But if we're going to find out if this is real, if what we had in that cabin meant something, we can't do it with Evelyn Shaw breathing down our necks. Cole moved closer. What are you saying? I'm saying I'll stay. I'll help you fight. Not because you've asked me to marry you, but because for 3 days you made me feel like I mattered. And I want to know if that feeling can last. His hand reached for hers. She let him take it. Thank you, he whispered. Outside, thunder rumbled. The first drops of rain began to fall. The days fell into a rhythm. Nora worked in the kitchen with Ruth, learning the routines of the ranch. She helped with cooking, with mending, with the 1,000 small tasks that kept a household running. But she also began to carve out her own space. Behind the house, she found a patch of ground that got good sun and had access to water from the well. Cole helped her turn the soil, build a small fence to keep the chickens out. They worked side by side, speaking little, but the silence was comfortable now. Easy. She planted the herbs she'd gathered from the canyon. Yerba mansa, willow, dock, sage. They took root in the Arizona soil as if they'd been waiting for her to put them there. On the 5th day, Ben Wade came running from the far pasture, his face white with fear. Snake, he gasped. Rattler got me. My leg. The other cowboys were right behind him, half carrying him. They laid him on the kitchen table. His right leg was already swelling, the puncture marks angry and red just above his boot. We need to get him to town, one of them said. Doctor's 3 hours away. He doesn't have 3 hours, another argued. We got to cut it off, cut the whole leg. No, Nora stepped forward. All eyes turned to her. I can help him. Ma'am, with all respect, this ain't no scraped knee, the first cowboy said. This is a rattler. He'll die. Not if you let me work, but you have to trust me. Ben looked up at her through pain-hazed eyes. Do it, he said, please. She sent them for water, for her herbs, for clean cloths. Then she cut the fang marks in a cross pattern the way her grandmother had shown her when she was 8 years old. She put her mouth to the wound and sucked, spitting the poison into a basin. Once, twice, 3 times. The cowboys watched in silence. She packed the wound with crushed yerba mansa mixed with charcoal from the fireplace, wrapped it tight, elevated his leg, made him drink willow bark tea for the fever that was already starting to spike. Cole appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. He saw Nora working over Ben, saw the way her hands moved with absolute certainty, and something shifted in his face. What can I do? Fresh water, clean rags, and keep everyone out of my way. He did exactly as she asked. No questions, just trust. Through the night, Nora sat with Ben. Cole sat beside her, ready with whatever she needed. Water, rags, more herbs. He watched her work with something like awe in his eyes. Where did you learn this? My grandmother, my mother. It's what Apache women do. We heal. At 2 in the morning, Ben woke up lucid. Am I going to lose a leg? Nora smiled, exhausted. You're going to keep the leg, and you're going to walk again. Give it time. When the doctor arrived at dawn, summoned by one of the cowboys who'd ridden through the night, he examined Ben's leg with professional skepticism that slowly turned to respect. Who did this work? The cowboys pointed to Nora. Where'd you study medicine? I didn't. I learned from the land, from my people. The doctor, a man in his 50s who'd seen enough frontier medicine to know skill when he saw it, nodded slowly. Well, you did better than half the medical school graduates I know. This boy would have lost the leg if you'd waited for me. After he left, the cowboys looked at Nora differently. Not as the mysterious Apache woman their foreman had brought home, but as someone who had saved one of their own. They started coming to her with injuries. A bad cut from barbed wire, a burn from branding, chronic back pain that the doctor in town couldn't fix. She treated them all with herbs from her garden, with knowledge passed down through generations of women who had learned to survive when the world offered no help. Cole watched from a distance, watched her become part of the ranch in a way he never could have forced or faked. Watched the men who worked for him begin to respect her, not because she was his intended, but because she had earned it. One evening he found her in the garden harvesting sage in the last light. You're good at this, he said, at what? Belonging, making a place for yourself. She straightened a handful of sage in her palm. I've never belonged anywhere. I'm not about to waste the chance when it comes. He stepped closer. I'm starting to think Thomas knew exactly what he was doing with that will. This place needs you. The men need you. I need you. Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Hartley. I haven't decided anything yet. But she was smiling when she said it. The carriage arrived on a Tuesday, black and polished, pulled by 2 matching grays that looked like they'd never worked a hard day in their lives. Nora was in the garden when she heard the wheels on gravel. She straightened, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. A woman stepped down, tall where Nora was average, fair where Nora was dark, dressed in a traveling suit of deep purple silk with jet buttons that caught the light, a hat with ostrich feathers perched at an angle on golden hair arranged in elaborate curls. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her welcome anywhere. Cole came out onto the porch. Nora saw him freeze when he recognized the visitor. Evelyn. Cole. Her voice carried across the yard, pitched to sound delighted. Or should I say, Mr. Hartley, I'm still getting used to your new importance. She started up the steps. Cole didn't move to help her. What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet your late husband's widow? The smile didn't reach her eyes. I came to see what Thomas left behind, to see what you've stolen. I haven't stolen anything. Thomas left me this ranch in his will. A will written by a sick old man who didn't know what he was doing. My lawyers will prove that. Evelyn's gaze swept across the yard and landed on Nora. Her expression changed, hardened. And who is this, your housekeeper? Cole descended the steps, placing himself between Evelyn and Nora. Her name is Nora. She's my guest. Your guest? Evelyn's laugh was cold. How progressive of you, Cole. An Indian woman living in my house, in my husband's house. Nora stepped forward. She'd spent her whole life being looked at like this, judged like this. She was tired of it. This isn't your house, and if Thomas Blackwood, knew what you were doing, he'd be ashamed. Evelyn's mask of civility cracked. How dare you? You have no idea what Thomas and I had, what he promised me. Then why did you leave him? Nora asked. If he meant so much to you, why abandon him for 4 years? The question hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn's face went red. That's none of your business. It is if you're trying to take what he left to someone else. For a moment, Evelyn looked like she might strike Nora. Then she collected herself, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. I've filed a claim with the court. The will is invalid. I'm Thomas's legal widow, which makes me the rightful heir. She turned to Cole. And when the judge hears about your situation here, living in sin with a woman who isn't your wife, he'll strip everything from you. She climbed back into her carriage. You have 2 weeks before the trial. I suggest you start packing. The carriage pulled away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Cole stood motionless, staring after it. She's right, he said quietly, about how it looks, about what the court will think. Then we make them see the truth. How she has money, lawyers, connections. We have nothing. Nora took his hand. We have the truth. Sometimes that's enough. The lawyer came again the next morning with the worse news. He spread a new set of documents across the table, his expression grim. Evelyn's filed an affidavit claiming the divorce was never finalized because Thomas was suffering from diminished mental capacity. She has a doctor from Phoenix who examined him a month before he died. He's willing to testify that Thomas showed signs of confusion, memory loss. That's a lie, Jack Cooper growled. He'd been listening from the doorway. I talked to Thomas a week before he passed, sharp as ever. Your testimony will help, Pierce said. But it's your word against a doctor's professional opinion. And Evelyn's lawyer will paint you as biased, as someone trying to protect his job. He looked at Cole and Nora. They'll also use your living arrangement against you, unmarried. No chaperone except Ruth, who's an employee. The court won't look kindly on that. What are our options? Fight it in court. Hope the judge sees through Evelyn's claims, or, he paused, you two could marry, fulfill the will's conditions. Show you're building the family Thomas wanted for this place. Cole shook his head. No, I won't turn marriage into a legal strategy. Even if you lose everything, even then. After Pierce left, Nora found herself thinking about the lawyer's words, about what it would mean to lose, not for Cole, but for everyone. For Ruth, who'd found stability here. For the cowboys who depended on Silver Star for their livelihood. For the people who'd started coming to her for healing. That evening, she walked down to the corrals where Cole was working with a young colt. The sun hung low, painting the world in shades of amber and rust. She leaned against the fence, watching him move with the quiet confidence of a man who'd spent his life with horses. I'm starting to care about this place, she said after a while. About these people. Cole looked over, surprised to see her there. And I can see what we'll lose if Evelyn wins. We'll figure something out. Will we, or will we just watch her take everything Thomas built, everything he wanted for you? Cole walked to the fence, rested his arms on the top rail, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. I won't ask you to marry me for the ranch, Nora. That's not what we are. I know, and that's why I'm starting to believe you might be worth the risk. The words hung between them. Not a promise, not yet, but something close. They stood together as twilight deepened, two people learning what it meant to trust again. The rider appeared 3 days later. Not from town, but from the north. A stranger on a tall bay horse wearing a badge that caught the sunlight like a warning. Cole was mending fence when the man rode up. Nora watched from the garden, her hands stilling on the sage she'd been harvesting. The stranger dismounted, 50 years old maybe, gray at the temples, the hard eyes of a lawman who'd seen too much and believed too little. Cole Morgan. The name hit like a physical blow. Cole straightened slowly, the hammer still in his hand. Who's asking? Sheriff Wade Mitchell, Montana Territory. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. I have a warrant for your arrest. Theft of livestock. Escape from lawful custody. You're coming back with me. Cowboys started to gather. Jack Cooper came out of the barn, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. That warrant's 5 years old, Cole said. His voice was steady, but Nora could see the tension in his shoulders. Oh, don't mean invalid. Mitchell's hand moved to his own weapon. You're under arrest. On whose authority? A second rider appeared, older than Mitchell, heavier, dressed in an expensive suit that looked out of place on horseback. Silas Kane. Nora's breath caught. This was the man from Cole's story, the rancher who'd destroyed his life over a lie. Kane smiled when he saw Cole's face go white. My authority, Morgan. I've been looking for you for 5 years. Finally tracked you down. Figured you'd run somewhere far. Somewhere you thought I couldn't reach. I didn't steal your horse. You know I didn't. I know my horse went missing and a traitor identified you as the seller. That's all the court needs to know. Jack stepped forward. You ain't taking him anywhere, Sheriff. Mitchell's hand moved to his gun. This is legal business, old man. Don't make it something else. More cowboys appeared. 8 of them. 10. All armed. All watching Kane with hostile eyes. Cole raised his hand. Stand down. All of you. Cole, Jack started. I said stand down. He looked at Mitchell. How do you want to do this? Peaceful if possible, but you're coming either way. Kane dismounted, walking closer with the confidence of a man who knew he'd already won. 5 years, Morgan. 5 years you've been running, but justice catches up eventually. You'll hang for what you did. I didn't do anything. Tell it to the judge. Oh, wait, Kane smiled. That would be Judge Harrison, friend of mine. Plays poker at my club every Thursday. I'm sure he'll give you a fair hearing. The sarcasm dripped like poison. Nora couldn't stay silent any longer. She walked across the yard, putting herself between Cole and Kane. He's telling the truth. Cole didn't steal anything. Kane looked her up and down, his lip curling. And who are you, his squaw? Cole moved faster than she'd ever seen him move. He grabbed Kane by the collar, lifted him onto his toes. Watch your mouth. Mitchell drew his gun. Let him go, Morgan. Don't make this worse. For a long moment, everything hung in balance. Then Cole released Kane, who stumbled backward, straightening his jacket with shaking hands. Salt, Kane sputtered. You all saw it. Assaulted on top of everything else. Mitchell looked tired. Mr. Kane might be best if you wait by the horses. Let me handle this. After Kane moved away, still muttering threats, Mitchell turned back to Cole. Here's how this works. I need to take you in front of the territorial judge here in Arizona. If he signs the extradition order, you go back to Montana for trial. If not, you're free. And who's the judge? Harrison, down in Crestwood. Jack cursed under his breath. He'll sign anything Kane wants. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, that's the law. Mitchell holstered his gun. I'll give you until tomorrow morning. Get your affairs in order. Then you come to town peaceful, or I come back with a posse. He climbed back on his horse. Don't make me hunt you, Morgan. You run again, I'll chase you to the ends of the earth. After they rode away, the ranch erupted in angry voices. Cowboys arguing about making a stand, about hiding Cole, about fighting. Cole silenced them with a raised hand. No, we don't fight the law. That's not who we are. Then what? Ben Wade demanded. We just let them take you. I don't know yet, but I need to think. He walked toward the barn, his gait uneven, the old injury from the rock slide still bothering him. Nora followed. She found him in the tack room, sitting on a saddle stand, head in his hands. You're going to run, aren't you? He looked up. His eyes were haunted. What choice do I have? If I go back to Montana, Kane will make sure I hang. And if you run, how long before they catch you? How long before you're right back where you started 5 years ago? At least I'd be alive. She knelt in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. Would you, or would you just be existing, running, hiding, always looking over your shoulder? Is that living? It's better than dying on a rope. Maybe, but what about everyone here? What about Jack? Ben Ruth, what about the ranch Thomas left you? They'll be fine. Evelyn will take the ranch, but she'll keep them on. Will she? Or will she sell it off piece by piece? Fire. Everyone destroy everything Thomas built. Cole's hands were shaking. What am I supposed to do? Nora, just walk into that courtroom and let them send me to my death. You stand up. You fight. You face this thing you have been running from for 5 years. I can't. Yes, you can, because you're not alone anymore. She took his hands in hers. I'll stand with you. Jack will stand with you. Every man on this ranch will stand with you. We'll fight Kane together. We'll find a way. There is no way. He owns the judges. the sheriffs, everyone who matters. Then we make them listen anyway. Jack appeared in the doorway. Boy, I've got something to say. He stepped inside, closed the door. I was a Texas Ranger for 25 years. I know the law, I know how it works, and I know how it fails. But I also know this. A man who runs spends his whole life running. A man who stands gets a chance at something better. Or a rope. Maybe, but at least he dies on his feet instead of on the run. Jack moved closer. Thomas left you this ranch because he believed in you. Because he saw something worth saving. Don't prove him wrong by running now. Cole looked between them. At Nora still kneeling in front of him, her hands warm around his. At Jack standing like an old oak tree, immovable and strong. If I stay, we fight this together. Together, Nora said. Together, Jack echoed. Cole closed his eyes, drew a long, shuddering breath. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but underneath it something harder. Something like resolve. All right, I'll stay. I'll face it. He stood pulling Nora up with him, but not for the ranch, not even for Thomas. I'll stay because, for the first time in 5 years, I want to stop running. I want to see if I can be the man you think I am. Nora felt something shift in her chest, something warm and bright and terrifying. Then we better get ready, because Kane won't make this easy. No, Cole agreed, he won't. Outside the sun was setting, the sky turned gold and crimson, beautiful and terrible all at once, like the beginning of something. Or maybe the end. Time would tell which. The war room was Jack Cooper's office, a small space off the barn that smelled of leather and gun oil, and the 40 years of frontier justice the old man had dispensed before trading his ranger badge for ranch work. Maps covered the walls, not decoration, but working documents marked with water sources, fence lines, the bones of a territory Jack knew better than most men knew their own faces. Cole stood at the center, Nora beside him, Jack behind his desk, Samuel Pierce in the corner chair, papers spread across his knees like fallen leaves. Ben Wade leaned against the doorframe. His snake-bitten leg almost healed his loyalty absolute. We've got 2 fights, Jack said, stabbing a finger at the desk. Evelyn's lawsuit over the will, Kane's extradition for the horse theft. Both come to head in the same week, both in front of the same judge. Judge Harrison, Pierce said. The name tasted sour. He's not corrupt exactly, but he's conventional, conservative. He'll follow the letter of the law even when the law is wrong, which means Evelyn's case is strong. She has documentation proving the divorce wasn't finalized. She has a doctor willing to say Thomas was mentally incompetent. And she has the fact that you're not married to Nora, which violates the will's conditions. Pierce looked at Cole over his spectacles. As for Kane's case without witnesses to contradict his story about the horse theft, the judge will likely sign the extradition order. You'll be sent back to Montana for trial. Where Kane owns the court, Ben muttered. Where Kane owns everything, Cole corrected. Silence fell, the kind that pressed against the ears like deep water. Outside, a horse whinnied. The windmill creaked on its axis. Normal sounds of ranch life continuing while the world collapsed around them. There's one witness, Jack said slowly. One person who saw what really happened that night in Montana. Everyone looked at him. Joseph Red Cloud, the Apache cowboy Cole stood up for. He was working night watch in the stable when Kane's boy took that horse. He saw everything. Where is he? Nora asked. Don't know, haven't seen him in 5 years, but I can find him. Jack stood his chair, scraping against wood. I've got friends, old rangers who owe me favors. If Joseph's anywhere in the territories, I'll get word to him. Will he come? Cole's voice was hollow. He stuck his neck out for me once already. Nearly got him killed. Why would he do it again? Because you did the same for him. Because some debts can't be paid except by showing up when it matters. Jack moved to the door. I'll send telegrams tonight. Every town between here and Montana. If Joseph's out there, we'll find him. After he left, Pierce gathered his papers. I'll prepare our defense. Get affidavits from everyone who can testify to Thomas's mental state. Jack, Ruth, the cowboys. We'll show the court that Thomas knew exactly what he was doing when he wrote that will. What about Nora and me? Cole asked. How do we handle that? Tell the truth. You're courting, taking time to know each other properly. There's no shame in that. Pierce paused at the door. But Cole, you should know. If you married before the trial, it would strengthen our case considerably. Show you're honoring Thomas's wishes. No. Cole's voice was firm. I won't do that to her. After Pierce left, Nora and Cole stood alone in the small office. The maps on the walls suddenly seemed like borders closing in, territories shrinking, options disappearing. You could still run, Nora said quietly. I could. No one would blame you. You would. She looked at him. Really looked. Saw the fear in his eyes. Saw the way his hands trembled when he thought she wasn't watching. But also saw something new. Something that hadn't been there before. A kind of desperate courage. The courage of a man who'd finally decided that some things were worth standing for. Yes, she said, I would. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, close enough to count the days of stubble on his jaw. Then I guess I'm staying. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwined, and for a moment in that small office that smelled of old leather and older justice, they stood together against the weight of what was coming. The sun was bleeding out across the western sky when Nora decided to ride into town. She needed to see Crestwood for herself, needed to understand what they were walking into when the trial began. Ruth tried to stop her. They won't be kind, not to you. I know. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. The ride took an hour. Crestwood appeared on the horizon like a mirage. A main street, buildings huddled together as if for warmth. A church steeple pointing at heaven like an accusation. She tied the horse outside the general store, felt the eyes on her before she even dismounted. Women in calico and gingham, their shopping stopped mid-sentence. Men lounging on the saloon steps, their conversation dying like embers. The storekeeper was a thin man named Harris. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered across his face. Not quite hostility, but not welcome either. Help you, she needed thread, fabric for mending. Simple things. He fetched them without comment, without meeting her eyes. Set them on the counter and named a price that seemed fair enough. She was counting out coins when the door opened behind her. Two women entered, middle-aged, well-dressed in the way of small-town society. Their voices carried. Is that her, the one living out at Silver Star? Must be. Apache, they say, living in sin with Cole Hartley. Shameful. That poor Mrs. Shaw, losing her husband and then having his ranch stolen by a cowboy and his Indian woman. Nora's hands stilled on the coins. She could feel Harris watching her, waiting to see what she'd do. She turned slowly, faced the women directly. I can hear you. The older one, Mrs. Pritchard, wife of the bank owner, drew herself up. We weren't speaking to you. No, you were speaking about me. There's a difference, Vaughn. We have a right to our opinions. You have a right to the truth, which is that I'm not living in sin. I have my own room. Ruth Miller is there every day. Cole Hartley and I are getting to know each other honorably, which is more than I can say for gossips who judge without knowing. Mrs. Pritchard's face flushed. You don't belong here. You should go back to wherever you came from. I belong wherever I choose to be, and I choose to be here. The door opened again. A woman stepped in, weathered face, work-hardened hands. Nora recognized her, Anna Miller, the woman whose son she'd treated for fever. Anna looked at the scene, at Nora standing alone, at the two women with their righteous anger, at Harris behind his counter, carefully neutral. Mrs. Pritchard, Mrs. Walsh. She nodded to each. Then she turned to Nora. Miss Nora, I wanted to thank you again for what you did for my boy. Doctor said there was nothing to be done. You sat with him all night, brought him through. She faced the other women. This woman has more kindness in her little finger than some folks have in their whole body. You want to judge her, judge yourselves first. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Mrs. Pritchard gathered her skirts. Well, I never. Maybe you should, Anna said calmly. After they left, Harris relaxed slightly. He even managed something that might have been a smile. That'll be $1.60 for the supplies. Nora paid, gathered her purchases, paused at the door. Thank you, she said to Anna. No thanks needed, just truth. On the ride back to Silver Star, Nora thought about what awaited them. A courtroom full of people like Mrs. Pritchard, A judge who valued convention over justice. A fight they might not win, but she also thought about Anna, about the cowboys who came to her for healing, about Ruth's quiet support, about Jack's fierce loyalty, about Cole who'd finally stopped running. They weren't completely alone. That had to count for something. The men came at twilight, 4 of them, riders on dark horses, their faces shadowed beneath hat brims. They didn't announce themselves, didn't knock, just pushed open the kitchen door like they owned the place. Ruth was at the stove. Nora was setting the table for supper. They both froze. The leader was a man in his 40s, tall, heavy through the shoulders. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw, white against tan skin. His eyes were the color of dirty ice. "Evening, ladies." His voice was polite. His presence was not. "Name's Jake Morgan. We're here on behalf of Mrs. Evelyn Shaw." Ruth stepped between him and Nora. "This is private property. You need to leave." "We will, soon as we deliver our message." One of his men picked up a ceramic vase from the counter, turned it in his hands, let it slip. The crash was loud in the quiet kitchen. Shards scattered across the floor like broken promises. "Accidents happen," Morgan said. "Be a real shame if this whole place went up in flames some night. These old ranch houses, they burn so easy." He moved to the window, looked out at the yard where Ben Wade was walking toward the bunkhouse. "That the boy who's gonna testify, the one with the snake bite?" Morgan smiled. "Rattlers ain't the only danger out here. Horse can throw a man, break his neck, or maybe someone's cinch strap gets cut. These things happen." Nora felt ice in her veins. This was more than threat. This was promise. Ruth's hand moved toward the knife block on the counter. "Don't even think about it, old woman." The door burst open. Jack Cooper stood there, Winchester rifle in his hands. Behind him, 8 cowboys, all armed, all with the cold eyes of men who'd seen violence and weren't afraid to meet it again. Jack's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. "Gentlemen, you were just leaving." Morgan assessed the situation, the guns, the numbers, the absolute certainty in Jack's face. "We were just having a conversation." "Conversation's over. You got 3 seconds to walk out that door. After that, we got a problem." The seconds ticked past. Morgan's men looked at each other, at the rifles, at Jack's weathered face that held no uncertainty, no hesitation. Morgan raised his hand slowly. "No need for unpleasantness." He walked to the door, stopped beside Jack. "Blackwell's got reach, old man, farther than you think. Any reach that includes my people is reach that runs into me. You remember that when you are thinking about coming back." After they left, the cowboys fanned out, some to watch the road, others to patrol the buildings. Jack organized it with military precision, dividing them into shifts that would last through the night. Cole arrived at a run drawn by the commotion. "What happened?" Nora told him. About Morgan, about the threats, about how close it had come to violence. His face went white, then red, then white again. "This is my fault. They're targeting you because of me." "They're targeting us because we're in Evelyn's way," Jack corrected. "That's different. I should leave. Take the fight away from here." "You do that, and they win." Jack checked the load in his rifle. "We stand together, or we fall apart. Those are the only choices." Through the night, the cowboys kept watch. Nora couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Morgan's ice-colored eyes, about the casual way he'd talked about burning the house, about killing Ben. Near 2 in the morning, she gave up and went to the porch. Cole was already there, sitting in the darkness, looking out at nothing. She sat beside him. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Cole broke the silence. "You don't have to do this. Tomorrow you could take a horse, ride to Tucson, catch a train east, anywhere, away from this mess." "I could." "No one would blame you." "I wouldn't blame you." "Yes, you would, and I'd blame myself." She turned to face him, found his eyes in the darkness. "In that cabin, you asked me why I stopped, why I didn't just ride for help. Remember what I said, Doyle? You said it wasn't complicated. I was hurt, and you were there. I'm here now. You're still hurt, maybe in different ways, but I'm not the kind of person who leaves when things get hard." His hand found hers in the darkness. "I love you." The words came out raw, scraped. "I know I have no right. I know I lied to you, Stu, but God help me, I love you." I know. Is that enough? Can it ever be enough? She thought about that, about trust broken and slowly rebuilding, about lies and truth and the complicated space between. Ask me again after the trial, after all this is over. Then I'll tell you if it's enough. They sat together until dawn, hand in hand, waiting for the fight to come. The courthouse was smaller than Nora expected, a single room with wooden benches and a raised platform where Judge Harrison would sit. The air smelled of old smoke and older justice, of deals made and lives decided by men who thought they knew better. The benches filled early, townspeople hungry for spectacle, ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers, anyone with time to watch the mighty fall. Evelyn Shaw sat at the front, dressed in black like the widow she claimed to be. Her face was pale, delicate. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though Nora saw no tears. Beside her sat Richard Blackwell, the lawyer from Phoenix, expensive suit, confident smile, the kind of man who'd never lost a case he cared about winning. On the other side, Cole and Nora sat with Samuel Pierce. Behind them, Jack, Ruth, Ben, Anna. A small army of allies, but still outnumbered by the crowd's sympathies. Judge Harrison entered, 60 years old, white hair, stern face. He moved like a man who'd judged thousands and found most wanting. Court is in session. The matter before us is the estate of Thomas Blackwood, deceased. The petitioner, Mrs. Evelyn Shaw, contests the will on grounds of mental incompetence and improper influence. Mr. Blackwell, you may proceed. Blackwell stood. His voice filled the room like honey laced with poison. Your Honor, members of the community, this is a simple case. Evelyn Shaw married Thomas Blackwood 8 years ago. It was a true marriage, a legal marriage. When they separated, Thomas was supposed to file for divorce. He did not. The paperwork was never completed, which means when Thomas died 2 months ago, Evelyn was still his legal wife. She is the rightful heir. He pulled out documents, marriage certificate, court records showing the divorce was incomplete. They looked official, binding. Furthermore, we will prove that Thomas Blackwood was not of sound mind when he wrote this will, that he was confused, forgetful, that Cole Hartley, a mere cowboy, manipulated a sick old man into signing away his life's work. Blackwell's gaze swept across the room, landed on Nora with calculated contempt. And finally, we will show that Mr. Hartley has violated the terms of the will by living in sin with this woman, an Apache, unmarried, no proper chaperone, a clear breach of moral standards. He sat down. The room buzzed with whispers. Nora felt the eyes, the judgment, the assumption that everything Blackwell said must be true because she was what she was. Pierce stood, smaller than Blackwell, quieter, but his voice carried weight. Your Honor, the truth is simpler than Mr. Blackwell suggests. Thomas Blackwood made a choice. He chose to leave his ranch to the man who saved his life, who worked beside him for 3 years, who earned his trust and his love. Pierce gestured to Cole. Cole Hartley is not a manipulator. He's a good man who's made mistakes, who's tried to do right. And Nora, this woman, Mr. Blackwell, dismisses so easily. She's a healer. She's saved lives, including Cole's. If that's sin, then the word has lost all meaning. He sat, but the damage was done. Nora could see it in the faces around them. Blackwell's opening had poisoned the well. The first witness was Dr. Hammond, from Phoenix, gray beard, professional manner. He took the stand with the authority of medical expertise. I examined Thomas Blackwood 1 month before his death, at Mrs. Shaw's request when she was considering reconciliation. What did you observe? Blackwell asked. Significant cognitive decline. He forgot names of people he'd known for years, told the same stories repeatedly, asked the same questions minutes apart. In my professional opinion, Thomas Blackwood was suffering from age-related dementia. He was not competent to make legal decisions. Pierce cross-examined. Did you conduct formal competency tests? No, but my observations were sufficient. Did you document these observations at the time? I made notes. May we see them? Dr. Hammond hesitated. They were lost. How convenient. Pierce's voice was dry. So we have only your word given months after the fact at the request of a woman who stands to inherit a fortune. Is that correct? My professional reputation speaks for itself. As does the fee Mrs. Shaw is paying you. Harrison banged his gavel. Mr. Pierce's accusations without proof helped no one. But the seed was planted. The jury, 12 men from Crestwood and surrounding ranches, looked skeptical. Next came Evelyn herself. She walked to the stand like a queen approaching her throne, sat with perfect posture, dabbed at her eyes again. Blackwell's questions were gentle, leading. He painted a picture of a young woman who'd married for love, who'd struggled with the loneliness of ranch life, who'd made a mistake leaving but had never stopped loving Thomas. Did you want a divorce? Never. The separation was temporary. I thought time apart would help us. I always planned to come back. When did you learn Thomas had died? 2 weeks after. I was traveling. When I returned to Phoenix, I found the telegram. I was devastated. Real tears now, or close enough to fool most people. And when you learned he'd left everything to a cowboy he barely knew, I was shocked, heartbroken. Thomas would never have done that if he was thinking clearly. Someone took advantage of him. She looked at Cole with perfect wounded innocence. Pierce's cross-examination was sharper. Mrs. Shaw, you said the separation was temporary. Yet you were gone 4 years. No letters, no telegrams, no contact whatsoever. Doesn't sound temporary to me. I was hurt. I needed time. You needed time. But Thomas needed a divorce. He filed papers. You never responded. I never received them. Or you ignored them. That's not true. Pierce pulled out a document. This is a telegraph receipt from Thomas to your Phoenix address, dated 3 years ago. It says, please respond regarding divorce papers. Need to move forward. You received this, didn't you? Evelyn's mask slipped. Just for a second. I don't remember. Convenient memory, like Dr. Hammond's lost notes. But even as Pierce scored points, Nora could see the jury's faces. They saw a widow fighting for what she believed was hers. They saw Cole and Nora unmarried living together. They saw what they expected to see. The day ended badly. Harrison adjourned until morning. As they filed out, Evelyn brushed past Nora. You can't win, she whispered. They'll never choose you over me. You're nothing but an Indian who got lucky. Nora kept walking, kept her head high, but the words burrowed deep. Outside, Cole was waiting. Tomorrow we fight back, he said. Will it matter? It has to. But neither of them sounded convinced. The second day began with Pierce calling his witnesses. Jack Cooper took the stand first. 62 years old, former Texas Ranger, a man whose word had weight in any frontier town. I knew Thomas Blackwood for 20 years, worked with him since Texas, and I'm telling you that man was sharp as a tack right up until he died. You're certain? Pierce asked. Certain as sunrise. Week before he passed, Thomas and I went over the ranch books, discussed breeding strategy for next year's calves, talked about water rights and fence repairs. Man knew every detail, every number. Nothing wrong with his mind. Blackwell stood for cross-examination. Mr. Cooper, you work for Cole Hartley now, don't you? I work for Silver Star Ranch, same as I did for Thomas. And if Mr. Hartley loses this case, you lose your job. Maybe, maybe not. So you have a financial interest in lying. Jack's eyes went cold. I've been a lot of things in 62 years, but never a liar. Thomas Blackwood was my friend. I owe him the truth. That's what I'm giving. The jury looked impressed, but one witness wasn't enough. Ben Wade came next, young, earnest. He told the story of the snake bite, how Nora had saved his leg when the doctor had given up, how Cole had sat with him through the night. That ain't the behavior of a manipulator, Ben said. That's the behavior of good people. Anna Miller testified about her son's fever, about Nora's kindness, about healing that had nothing to do with money or advantage. Each testimony chipped away at Blackwell's narrative, but not enough, not nearly enough. Then Pierce called Nora. She walked to the stand on legs that felt like water, took the oath, sat with her hands folded the way her mother had taught her. Meet their eyes. Show them you are not ashamed. Pierce's questions were gentle, leading her through the story, finding Cole in the canyon, the cabin, the journey to Silver Star. Why did you stop? Pierce asked. Why help a stranger? Because he needed help, because I was there. It's not more complicated than that. You didn't know who he was, didn't know about the ranch. I knew he was dying. That was enough. She told them about the 3 days, the fever, the cornbread, teaching Cole about herbs, how he looked at her like she mattered. When did you learn the truth? When we arrived at the ranch, when Ben called him Mr. Hartley instead of Eli Morgan. How did you feel? Betrayed, angry, used. But you stayed. I wanted to understand why he lied. Wanted to know if the man in the cabin was real or just another deception. And what did you discover? Nora looked at Cole, at the man who'd lied to her and then stood up when it mattered. I discovered that people are complicated, that mistakes don't erase goodness, that someone can be flawed and still be worth believing in. Blackwell's cross-examination was brutal. He asked about her background, her mixed blood, her mother's work in the mills, her poverty. He painted a picture of a desperate woman who'd latched onto the first opportunity. You lived in Cole Hartley's house for over a month, unmarried, no proper chaperone. Ruth was there every day. A housekeeper, not family. I don't have family. They're dead. How convenient. No one's to vouch for your character. My character speaks for itself. I've helped everyone who asked, expected nothing in return. You expect a ranch, don't you? A fortune? I expect honesty, which is more than I can say for some people in this room. The courtroom stirred. Harrison banged his gavel, but Nora wasn't done. You want to know what I wanted when I came to Arizona, a home. Not money, not status, just a place to belong. I didn't come for a fortune. I came for the same thing every person wants, to matter to someone. She looked at the jury. 12 men who'd probably never seen an Apache woman as fully human. Cole Hartley lied to me, that's true, but he also treated me with more respect than I've ever known. He saw me, not my blood, not my poverty, just me. If you can't understand why that's precious, then I pity you. Blackwell tried to regain control, but the damage was done. Some of the jurors were nodding, not all, but some. Cole took the stand last. He told his story. Montana, Kane, the false accusation, running, finding Thomas, the years of loyal work. I didn't ask for the ranch, didn't expect it. When Mr. Pierce read the will, I nearly refused. Didn't think I deserved it. Why did you accept? Pierce asked. Because Thomas wanted someone to love this land the way he did. And I do. Every acre, every creek, every sunrise over the eastern hills. This place became my home, my second chance. Tell us about Nora. Cole's voice softened. I found her letters in Thomas's office. She wrote about wanting a home, just that. No demands, no expectations. She seemed real in a way I hadn't known for years. So you wrote back using Thomas's name? Yes. It was wrong, cowardly, but I was afraid if she knew the truth that I was just a cowboy with a criminal past, she'd never come. You were going to tell her the truth. At the station. That was the plan. Meet her, explain everything, hope she'd give me a chance anyway. But the accident happened first. And in the cabin? In the cabin, I fell in love with her kindness, her strength, the way she saved my life without expecting anything back. By the time we got to the ranch, I knew I didn't deserve her. But I also knew I couldn't let her go. He looked at Nora. I don't deserve this ranch. I know that. And I definitely don't deserve her. But if I lose everything else, if I never have another thing in my life, I'll still be grateful for those 3 days. Because for 3 days, I got to be the man I wanted to be. The man she saw in me. Blackwell's cross was vicious. He hammered Cole about the lies, about living with Nora unmarried, about his criminal past. You're a wanted man, aren't you? Escaped from jail in Montana. I was falsely accused. That's what they all say. You ran rather than face justice. I ran rather than face a lynch mob. Same thing to a guilty man. I'm not guilty. Prove it. And Cole couldn't. Not without Joseph Red Cloud. Not without a witness to the truth. The afternoon was wearing thin when the courtroom door opened. A man stepped inside. Tall, patchy, long black hair tied back, dressed in cowboy clothes worn soft with work. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who traveled far and arrived exactly when he meant to. Every head turned. Cole stood. His face went white. Joseph. Joseph Red Cloud walked down the aisle, stopped in front of the judge. Your Honor, I have information relevant to this case. Information about what really happened in Montana 5 years ago. Harrison leaned forward. Who are you, ye? Joseph Red Cloud. I worked at the Double K Ranch in Montana 6 years ago. I was there the night Silas Kane's horse went missing. I know who took it, and it wasn't Cole Morgan. The courtroom exploded. Harrison banged his gavel repeatedly. Order, I will have order. When silence finally returned, Harrison looked at Joseph with something like respect. You're willing to testify under oath? Yes, sir. Mr. Pierce, is this your witness? Pierce was on his feet, barely containing his relief. Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Joseph Red Cloud to the stand. Joseph took the oath, sat with the same easy confidence, met every eye that judged him. Pierce began. Mr. Red Cloud, tell us what you saw that night. I was working night watch in the stable. Around 2 a.m, I heard someone. James Kane, Silas Kane's son. He came for his father's thoroughbred, the one worth $500. What did he do? Saddled it, let it out. I asked him what he was doing. He told me to shut my mouth if I knew what was good for me. Said his father would fire me if I said anything. Did you report this? Next morning, when Silas Kane accused Cole of theft, I told him I'd seen James take the horse. Told him Cole was innocent. What did Kane say? Joseph's jaw tightened. He said if I testified to that, he'd make sure I was arrested too. Said no one would believe an Apache over his son anyway. Said he'd see me hang beside Cole. So you stayed silent? To my shame, yes. I was scared. I knew Kane had the power to do exactly what he threatened. What changed? Joseph looked at Cole. I heard Cole was facing the same charges again. After 5 years of running, I realized I'd been a coward once. Couldn't be one twice. Cole stood up for me when Kane was beating me with a riding crop. Risked his job, his safety. Time I returned the favor. Blackwell stood. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. This witness wasn't on the disclosure list. He just arrived, Pierce said. We had no way to know he'd come. Harrison considered. I'll allow it, but Mr. Blackwell, you'll have full opportunity to cross-examine. Blackwell approached Joseph like a wolf circling prey. You're Apache. Yes. You hold a grudge against Silas Kane. I hold truth against lies. You have no proof of what you claim, just your word. I swore an oath. That's my proof. An oath from an Indian who has every reason to lie to protect his friend. Joseph's voice went cold as winter stone. I came here knowing what it would cost, knowing men like you would call me liar. But Cole Morgan is innocent. I saw what I saw, and I won't let another man hang for a crime Kane's son committed. The jury stirred. Some looked skeptical, but others, the ranchers who knew what it meant to stand up when it mattered, were nodding. Blackwell tried a few more questions, but Joseph was unshakable. Finally, he gave up. Harrison called a recess. We'll hear closing arguments tomorrow, then the jury will deliberate. As they filed out, Nora saw Kane in the back row. His face was purple with rage. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The closing arguments were brief. Blackwell painted Evelyn as a wronged widow, Cole and Nora as opportunists. But his confidence had shaken. Joseph's testimony had damaged the narrative. Pierce spoke simply. Thomas Blackwood made a choice. He chose the man who saved his life, who worked beside him, who earned his trust. Evelyn Shaw abandoned him for 4 years. Cole Hartley stood by him. The law should honor Thomas's wishes. The jury filed out. The waiting began. 45 minutes later, they returned. The foreman stood, a rancher named Williams, weathered face, steady eyes. On the matter of the will, we find that Thomas Blackwood was of sound mind when he wrote it. The will stands. Silver Star Ranch belongs to Cole Hartley. Evelyn gasped. Blackwell's face went rigid. On the matter of the marriage requirement, we find that Mr. Hartley has acted in good faith. While not yet married, his courtship of Miss Nora demonstrates honest intent to honor the will's conditions. Harrison banged his gavel. So ordered. The ranch remains with Cole Hartley. Mrs. Shaw's claim is denied. The courtroom erupted, some cheering, some angry. Evelyn stood shaking with fury, but Harrison wasn't done. However, there remains the matter of the Montana warrant. Sheriff Mitchell, you have business with this court. Mitchell stood. I do, Your Honor. But in light of Mr. Red Cloud's testimony, I'm requesting the extradition order be suspended pending a full investigation in Montana. If what Mr. Red Cloud says is true, charges against Cole Morgan should be dropped. Harrison nodded. Granted, Mr. Morgan, you're free to remain in Arizona while this matter is resolved, but don't leave the territory. Cole sagged with relief. They had won. Against all odds, they had won. Outside the courthouse, Evelyn caught up with them. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you've won, Kane will destroy you. He has men, money. He won't let this stand. Nora stepped forward. Why do you hate us so much? Is it the money, the ranch? Evelyn's mask cracked. For a moment, Nora saw something raw beneath. You want to know why? Because you're everything I pretended to be. Kind, genuine, self-sacrificing. Thomas saw through me in 6 weeks, but he would have died for you in 6 days. Her voice broke. You make me look like what I am, a liar, a cheat, a woman who's only worth what she can take from men. You could be different, Nora said quietly. No, I couldn't. This is who I am. She climbed into her carriage. I hope you're happy together. I hope you build something real. The bitterness in her voice was like poison, but underneath something else, something that almost sounded like longing. The carriage pulled away. They watched it disappear down the dusty street, and Nora felt something unexpected. Not triumph, but sadness. Some people were broken beyond fixing, and that was the saddest thing of all. The attack came that night. Cole and Nora were riding back to the ranch alone under the stars, talking about the future, about what came next, the relief of victory still fresh. Then 3 riders burst from the darkness. The horse spooked. Cole fought the reins, trying to keep control. One of the riders fired a shot over their heads. The sound was deafening in the quiet night. Cole's horse reared. Nora grabbed the saddle horn to keep from being thrown. The riders pulled alongside, rough men, hired guns, one grab for Nora. Cole lashed out with his fist, catching the man across the jaw. He fell back with a curse. But there were 3 of them, and they were armed. Get down, one growled. Both of you, Kane wants a word. From the darkness, a 4th rider appeared. Silas Kane himself. He moved forward, slowly savoring the moment. Did you really think it would end in a courtroom? Morgan, did you think I'd let you embarrass me like that? This is over, Kane. The court ruled. Joseph testified. Everyone knows the truth now. Truth, Kane laughed. Truth is what powerful men say it is. And I'm going to say you died in a tragic accident. Thrown from your horse. Broke your neck. He looked at Nora. And your woman too. Shame. But these things happen. The hired guns drew their weapons. This was it. The end. After everything they'd survived, it would end in an unmarked grave on a dark road. Then hoofbeats. Many hoofbeats. Jack Cooper appeared over the rise. Ben Wade beside him. 8 more cowboys behind them. All armed. All riding hard. Kane, Jack's voice cut through the night. Step away from them. Kane's face went white. The hired guns looked at each other, at the approaching riders, at the odds that had suddenly shifted. Sheriff Mitchell appeared last. He must have followed them from towns suspicious of exactly this kind of trouble. Mr. Kane, Mitchell said calmly, I'm arresting you for attempted murder, conspiracy, whatever else I can make stick. You can't prove anything. I heard your confession. So did all these witnesses. That's plenty. Mitchell pulled out handcuffs. Kane looked at Cole, at the empire crumbling around him, at the justice he'd avoided for so long finally catching up. This isn't over. Yes, Cole said quietly. It is, for both of us. I'm done running, and you're done chasing. Mitchell took Kane away. The hired guns scattered, and Cole and Nora stood in the starlight alive when they should have been dead. Jack rode up. Figured you might need backup. Me and the boys decided to follow, just in case. Thank you. That's what family does. The word hung in the air. Family. Not boss and employee, not rancher and cowboy. Family. Cole pulled Nora close. Let's go home. 3 days later, Cole found Nora in the garden. The evening sun painted everything gold. The sage and yerba were thriving. The land was healing just like the people on it. He knelt beside her. Nora, I asked you once with Olay, used another man's name, made promises I had no right to make. I remember. I want to ask you again, but with the truth this time, all of it. He took her hands. My name is Cole Morgan. Used to be a wanted man. Now I'm free. I have a ranch I don't deserve and a past I'm not proud of. I've lied to you and hurt you and given you every reason to say no. But, but I love you more than I thought I could love anything. And I want to spend whatever time I have left proving I can be the man you see in me. He pulled out a ring, simple silver, the same ring she'd seen on his finger that first day when his hand was jutting out from under the rocks. This was my mother's. It's all I have of her, and I want you to have it. Nora looked at the ring, at the man offering it. Yes, yes. Not because of the ranch, not because of the will, but because the man in the cabin was real. And I want to see what else is real between us. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, long and sweet and full of promises they would both keep this time. The wedding was 3 months later, October in Arizona, the air cool and clear, the sky impossible blue. They held it at the ranch. Reverend Hart officiating, Jack and Ruth as witnesses, every cowboy, Anna and her family, Ben and his girl, Joseph Red Cloud. Even some of the townspeople who judged them harshly came drawn by curiosity or conscience. Nora wore a simple white dress Ruth had helped her make, a crown of sage and yerba in her hair. She looked like something from a dream. Cole wore a new suit but still had the rough hands of a working man. He looked at Nora like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. Hart read from his book. Do you, Cole Morgan Hartley, take this woman to be your lawful wife? I do. Do you, Nora, take this man to be your lawful husband? She looked at Cole, at the man who'd tested her and lied to her and then stood beside her through everything that followed. I do. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife. Cole kissed her. The crowd cheered, and somewhere in the vast Arizona sky, the spirits of those who'd come before looked down and smiled. The celebration lasted into the evening. Food and music and dancing. People who'd been strangers became friends. The community that had rejected Nora slowly, carefully learned to accept her. As night fell, Cole and Nora found a quiet moment at the edge of the gathering. The lanterns cast warm pools of light across the yard. Somewhere a fiddle played a slow waltz. They stood together watching their celebration unfold. Happy? Cole asked. Nora thought about the journey, from Fort Apache to Tucson Station, from the canyon to the cabin to this ranch, from being nobody to being somebody's wife, somebody's partner. Yes, I'm happy. I was thinking, Cole said, about the old barn, the one we don't use anymore. What about it? We could turn it into a clinic, a real clinic, for anyone who needs help. Apache white Mexican. Doesn't matter. You could teach what you know. Pass it on. Nora felt something warm bloom in her chest. You'd do that. It's your ranch too now, your home. You should have a place that's just yours. Our ranch, she corrected. Our home. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the celebration continue around them. A year later, the clinic was thriving. Nora had trained 3 other women in the healing arts. People came from miles around, the Apache especially. They recognized one of their own who hadn't forgotten where she came from. The ranch was prospering too. Cole had expanded the herd, built new fences, repaired the irrigation system. With Jack's help and Joseph's now working as second foreman, Silver Star had become everything Thomas had dreamed. And on a spring morning in 1885, Nora stood in the clinic, one hand on her swelling belly, the other holding a letter. It was from Montana, from Sheriff Mitchell. Dear Mrs. Hartley, thought you and Cole should know. The investigation is complete. James Kane confessed to stealing his father's horse. All charges against Cole Morgan have been dropped. He's a free man. Silas Kane is serving 5 years for obstruction of justice. Justice delayed, but justice nonetheless. She walked to where Cole was working with a young horse in the corral. He saw her face and stopped. What is it? She handed him the letter. He read it again, then looked up with eyes bright with tears. It's over, really over. It's over. He wrapped his arms around her, felt the swell of their child between them. A year ago, I was nobody, a wanted man running from shadows. Now you're a husband, a rancher, a father. Because of you, because of us. They stood together in the Arizona sunshine, not running anymore, not hiding, just living. That evening, as the day's last light painted the western sky in brilliant streaks of orange and rose, they walked together to their favorite spot, the small rise behind the house where the land rolled away toward the horizon, where you could see forever, or at least as far as tomorrow. What are you thinking about? Cole asked. Tomorrow, the clinic, all the people who'll come, the baby coming in 4 months. Our life. Our life, he repeated. I like the sound of that. Nora looked at the land stretching before them, at the ranch they'd fought to keep, at the home they'd built from lies and truth and forgiveness. You know what I realized? What? I came to Arizona looking for a home, a place to belong, and I found it, but not in the way I expected. How so, Bo? I thought home was a place, four walls and a roof, but it's not. Home is people. It's you and Jack and Ruth and all the rest. It's being seen, being valued, being loved. Cole took her hand. We came from nothing, both of us, broken people with broken pasts, and we built something whole. In the distance, a coyote called, patient and knowing. The sound carried across the grassland like a promise. Nora thought about her grandmother, about the medicine she'd passed down, about the strength that came from knowing who you were and where you came from. She thought about her mother, about moving forward, about the spirits helping those who help themselves. And she thought about Thomas Blackwood, a man she'd never met but who'd changed her life anyway, who'd seen something in Cole worth saving, who'd left behind a legacy bigger than land or money. You know what Thomas would say if he could see us now, Cole asked. What? He'd say we did exactly what he hoped we'd do. We built a family, we built a home, we built something that matters. Nora leaned against him, felt the steady beat of his heart. Sometimes the best things come from the worst beginnings. Like us. Like us. Night deepened around them. Above the heavens revealed themselves slowly constellation by constellation. Ancient patterns of light breaking through the darkness. The kind of beauty that reminded you how small you were. How brief, how precious. And yet here they stood. Two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way, who'd built something lasting from rubble and ruin. They had fought for this, bled for it, nearly died for it, but they had won. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered.